In this painting, we are going to create waves using cauliflower effect, which is otherwise called a background. This is my 10th painting in Watercolor Seascape series. The sketch needed for this painting is given here and the link to the sketch is given in the description. You can download the image from that link. I start by wetting the sky portion of the paper. I'm being careful not to wet inside the sail. Then I mix cerulean blue with little amount of Viridian green to paint the sky. I paint the sky using a normal plain wash. Also, I'm being careful not to paint inside the sail. After painting the sky, tilt the boat so that the excess pigment are collected near the tip. You can remove that excess pigment using a waistcloth or a tissue. After that, allow the paper to dry completely. Next, mix cerulean blue with Viridian green to paint the sea. We are going to use wet on dry technique to paint the sea. Be careful not to paint inside the sailboat. After every stroke, fill the edges with pool of pigment so that it doesn't get dry fastly. I'm painting the areas around the sailboat using a round brush. To paint the sea, I'm using a mop brush. A mop brush holds a lot of pigment, so you don't need to dip your brush every time in your palette. I always use mop brush for any watercolor painting and I use round brush only for fine details. You can see I'm adding a pool of pigment to the edges of the stroke using a mop brush. Then after that I'm giving another stroke using the mop brush. After giving a couple of strokes, I dip the brush in water and reduce the amount of pigment in the brush. And using that same brush, I'm giving another stroke. And also I'm being careful not to paint inside the hat of that woman. And also one important point is my board is tilted in 30-degree angle so that the pool of water is collected at the edges. You can see a pool of pigment at the edges. Now I'm dipping the brush in water and reducing the amount of pigment in the brush. Using that brush, I'm giving another stroke to paint the sea. You can see a pool of pigment at the edge. Using a damp brush, I'm going to suck all those pigment that is present at the edge. Next, I'm using another mop brush which is loaded with plain water. I'm adding some droplets to the wet pigment area so that the water pushes the pigment from its area, forming cauliflower effect, which is otherwise called as a background. If you find that there is too much water, then you can pick it up by using a damp brush. Tilt the boat slightly as shown in the video and allow the water to push the pigment even more from its place. Next, using a damp brush, I am smoothing the hard edges. I'm adding a little amount of water using the round brush because I want the pigment to move out of its place. One important point I want to remind you is be careful while adding water to the wet pigment. If you add too much of water, then there will be a big cauliflower effect. First, add a little amount of water to see how it works. If you want, then you can add even more water, or you can stop at that time if you are satisfied with the cauliflower effect that is formed. Next, I mixed cobalt blue with little amount of permanent orange to paint the wet sand. Using a damp brush, I am softening the edges here. Next, I'm mixing equal amount of permanent orange and cobalt blue to create the brown sand. I have slightly painted inside the hat, so I'm lifting that color using a damp brush. Next, I'm painting the distant sailboat. I'm using Crimson Lake and Violet to paint the sail. I've added a man on the sailboat, and using violet I give a stroke under this sailboat. Next, I'm going to paint the woman. The reference photo for this woman is given in the description. You can download this image and refer it for painting the woman. I use cobalt blue mixed with permanent orange to paint the hat, skin tone and shadow of the woman. To paint her bikini, I used Crimson Lake. By changing the values of the pigment, which is the mix of cobalt blue and permanent orange, you can create a variety of colors. I mixed cobalt blue with permanent orange and little amount of Crimson Lake to paint her hair. Use the reference photo to know where is the darkest part and where is the light value while painting the woman. To paint the shadow part of the hat, I used more cobalt blue mixed with little amount of permanent orange. I used the same mix to paint the shadow of the woman on the sand. If you are a beginner and you find difficult to draw and paint this woman, you can skip this part. You can just paint the sky and the sea waves and sand and the distant sailboat, and that will create a beautiful scenery. At last, splatter some brown color for the pebbles on the sand. We reached the end of this video. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. See you in another video. Until then, take care and bye bye from Prema.